We have the bald eagle. Oh, and we got the meeting recording. Good. So we missed some of that. That's okay. So we have a bald eagle and we have the golden eagle. And if you are maybe a little bit newer to raptors, you might look at these two birds and go, why would I need any sort of information about how to identify these? Like, it's kind of easy, right? We got white-headed bird and dark-headed bird. Well, that is true when these birds are adults, but at different stages of their lives, they can look very different. So it's very easy to tell apart these two birds. But what about these two birds? That's a little bit of a different situation, right? They have some very similar appearances, and especially if you're far away, it could be quite difficult to tell them apart. And let's face it, for most of us, when we see a raptor, it's not just sitting nicely on a stump like this so we can get out our binoculars and look really close. Oftentimes it's flying. So what about these two birds? It can be a real challenge to identify eagles when they are in their juvenile plumage. So before we get into the specifics of telling juveniles apart, let's look at each bird individually and see what characteristics are really distinctive and stand out that we can use to identify them in the field. This is called field marks. So let's look at some of those. So first we're going to start with the golden eagle. So when you're trying to identify a bird, there's a couple of things you want to look for. You're always going to look for size, and for these guys, they're big. So most often, if people have an adult golden eagle, sometimes they might mistake it for like a red-tailed hawk or another soaring hawk or buteo. But really the difference is these guys are much, much bigger. So when you see one of them flying, it's a really dramatic contrast to, say, red tail or some other sort of buteo that would be soaring around. So size is the first thing we're going to look for. And then the next thing, of course, we're going to look at is their coloration and their plumage. And so with golden eagles, they're named golden eagles for a reason, and that's because they have these really beautiful golden feathers on their nape. You know, when ombre hair was really in fashion, where people would have kind of like dark roots and then these beautiful blonde ends. I'm pretty sure they got that from the golden eagle. He was doing that before it was cool. So that golden nape is a good indicator. Of course, that's can be really hard to see if they're flying and you're looking at them from below. But sometimes even then, because those feathers are so kind of reflective or like a different color than the rest of their back, you can still get a flash of them. The other thing you're going to look for is pretty dark plumage. They have almost a chocolatey color. Some, like all birds, there's different kind of color variations. Some are lighter, some are darker, but generally speaking, overall, the bird is going to be fairly dark. So the other thing you can look at is its legs. This is actually a really important tip for distinguishing between bald eagles and golden eagles. So I like to think of golden eagles as wearing pants. They have their little trousers. They go all the way down to their feet. So you can see there are feathers, even though they're lightly colored near their feet, there are feathers all the way down to where their toes start. So think of them as wearing long pants. Another thing is the head. So between the bald eagle and the golden eagle, a golden eagle has a much smaller, kind of more streamlined head. And their bill, once they are an adult, will be pretty dark. So you can see some yellow on that bird's bill. This kind of fleshy part at the top of the bird's bill is called a cere. And so that part will stay yellow, but the rest of the bill is going to be pretty dark. Whereas with a bald eagle, which we'll see in a minute, when they're adults, those bills are pretty bright yellow. So again, pay attention to the scale of that head compared to the rest of the body. You can see, you know, once you actually pay attention to it, you can see that it kind of looks a little bit small compared to the rest of this eagle's body. So let's look at let's look at flying, sorry. So a golden eagle in flight, a couple things you're going to look for. Um, Again, the small head. So if you look at this bird and look at the head compared to the tail, the length of the head is much shorter than the tail. So it's almost like two heads length versus amount of length is in the tail. So it has a nice long tail and a small head. So that's one way to, if you're seeing them from far away, to kind of get a good guess at what eagle you're looking at. And then long wings. So these wings, I mean, look at the wings in the size to its compared to its body. These birds can have a wingspan of over 6 feet, 6 to 7 feet. So they're going to be really big. And they hold those wings at what we call a slight dihedral. So it's just a shallow V. So when you see a turkey vulture, I mean, they're a V, but these guys will be almost straight with just a little bit of a shallow V um, held to their wings. And then again, that tail is a lot longer than the head, and it's pretty noticeable on a soaring golden eagle. The last thing you want to look at when you're trying to identify a bird is where are you seeing it? What context, what landscape is around that bird? Because that can be an excellent clue. Golden eagles, they prefer open habitat and they nest on cliff faces. And so they're going to be found in places where you have lots of grasslands, shrubs, desert, tundra, those kinds of habitats. And they prefer to hunt mammals. So they're going to be usually closer to like dry land. They're going to focus more on that where you can find more mammals. The other thing about the golden eagle is that it's really primarily a western eagle. You really only see it in the western half of the United States. Now, they do live around the world, but as far as America is concerned, they mostly live in the western half. Now, I did recently hear a report that some of them are popping up in like the Great Lakes regions, like Michigan and Minnesota, in those areas. So it could be that they are slowly expanding their range, who knows, or that could just be kind of a one-off. Birds can fly, so sometimes they end up in strange places. So let's look at our bald eagles. So already you can see this is a much heavier looking bird. Again, for size, he's even bigger than the golden eagle. So overall, bald eagles can be bigger. There can be really big golden eagles and there can be small bald eagles. But generally speaking, in the raptor world, males are smaller than females. So a large male or a large female golden eagle might be about the size of a male bald eagle. So oftentimes when you see a bald eagle, it's going to be a little bit bigger and stockier than a golden eagle. So going back to our same indicators, let's look at its plumage and its body. So as adults, duh, right? It has a white head and a white tail. That's a really big giveaway. So, it's not difficult to identify an adult bald eagle because of those really distinct markings. But the other thing you should look at, now this one has a band on, so it's kind of hard to see, but he has bare legs. We call those tarsi. So remember, our golden eagle had feathers all the way down to the toes, so he was wearing long pants. And our bald eagle is wearing capri pants. He has his little ankles showing like a naughty 1800s, saloon girl. He's showing his ankles. So part of the reason for that is that these guys like to hunt fish and they're often around water. So having a bare leg like that prevents, wet feathers, which can make it harder to fly and can be cold. So look for that bare leg. It can be a really important indicator. Another thing we're going to look at is look at that head. So remember our golden eagle's head compared to the body was so tiny compared to this bald eagle. So he's got a really stocky head. He's got a really heavy yellow bill, and he has a light, clear yellow eye. So some golden eagles will have, I mean, they have kind of yellowish eyes too, but they tend to be a more orangey and a lot darker looking than a bald eagle. So different bird, different body shape. As an adult, it's really easy. Let's look at flying. Okay, so once again, that white head and that white tail just really stands out. So long wings again, but look at the size of the body on this bald eagle. His body's a little bit wider, so his wings in comparison to the width of his body are not quite as long as the golden. And the other thing is he holds those wings straight out. So when our golden eagle has like a slight dihedral, our bald eagle is just going to be straight. And I've heard it said like you could put a board across his wings and they would be touching all along the board. So that's one sign to look for. The large head, obviously. Now let's look at this one. Um, his tail is shorter, and I thought I had, there it is, measurement here. So his head compared to his tail, um, there's not going to be sort of two head lengths of tail on this guy because his head is much larger. So it's going to appear that the tail is shorter than on the other one. And again, look at that heavy set body. So, you know, you've got a kind of a barrel chested bird in a bald eagle. I kind of think of it as the difference between like a mastiff and like a wolfhound or um, I don't know, a sleek hound, you know. So you think of dogs, they're both big dogs, they're both really heavy, but one's really kind of heavy set and bulky, and one's a little more slender and graceful looking. So once again, we have the context of the environment. Where are you seeing this bird? Bald eagles like to be near water. As I mentioned, they like to eat fish. They'll eat lots of other things too, including garbage, and they're also notorious thieves. They will steal food from other birds or mammals if they can. But generally speaking, they're going to be near some kind of open water. So you're going to be probably near a lake, a coastline, a river, a marsh, and or at the Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge where there's tons of open water, lots of prey items, and they generally are a little bit more reliant on trees than golden eagles. They tend to nest in trees and they like to perch in trees. So it's going to be a wetter area. And if you see a bald eagle in the lower 48, it's probably winter time. So for the most part, they are going to breed and spend their summers up in the Arctic or Canada. And so here, especially in Utah, you're really only going to see them in the wintertime. Some places that are really high in the Rockies, you might have some year-round residents, but for the most part, they're just visiting us here in the wintertime. Although I actually, to be honest, saw a nesting pair at Bear Lake last summer on the Utah-Idaho border. So, you know, like I said, they can fly, they end up in different places, but generally speaking, that's where you'll see them. Okay, so adults, this is easy, right? We can ID these birds no problem. Well, like is so common in life, it's the juveniles who ruin everything. They make things so much harder. So these two birds that we looked at earlier, they're juveniles, and you might already be able to tell them apart based on what we've already talked about. But juveniles, unfortunately, they don't follow the same rules as their parents. They look a little different and can be really hard to distinguish, again, especially from far away. So let's do a side by side of our bald eagle juvenile and our golden eagle juvenile. And we're going to look at a couple of things. And again, when they're side by side, it's pretty easy. It's when they're not next to each other that it can be hard. So first of all, let's look at their heads, right? We have that small, sleek head on that golden eagle. We have the big, chunky head on the bald eagle. And of course, he has a dark bill right now, which makes it hard again. It's like they're just trying to trick us. So the bill color is not going to be very useful to you when you're looking at juveniles, but the shape of the head, and also look at how the bill of that bald eagle takes up about a third of the size of its head. So it's a pretty chunky bill. We're going to look for different plumage markings. So even juvenile golden eagles can start to have a golden nape on the back of their neck. So that's one thing that can be a big tell right away. The bald eagles will have really mottled or kind of spotty plumage on their breast and their tail and underneath their wings. So it's just, and it's funny because later that part of them will be totally dark, but at this stage they have like white kind of, I've heard it said that they look dirty, like they've been in a mud bath or something. Um, Also, another great thing for telling apart juveniles is the tails. So there may be some white on a bald eagle's tail when it's young, as its new white tail is growing in over the years. But on a juvenile golden eagle, they have a really distinct, clear white tail band. So you can see the tips of their tail feathers are black, and then they have a white patch or white band from from the black part all the way up to their rump. So when their wings are open and their tails fanned, you can really see that big white patch. So that's a really helpful indicator. And then our legs, again, are really important. So feathers all the way down to the feet, you have a golden eagle, and feathers that stop short and show off those dainty little ankles, which are not dainty or little, um, are a bald eagle. So now how about flight? This can be tricky, right? They look very similar, especially again far away or if they're backlit, but there's a couple of things we can look for that will help us identify them. So again, look at the head. Now this juvenile bald eagle on the right, its head actually looks pretty small because it hasn't grown in sort of that full complement of big feathers. This is a really young guy. But look at his bill compared to the rest of his head. It almost looks like he hasn't grown into it yet. So that big chunky bill is going to be a dead giveaway. And on our golden, again, we have that little sort of petite bill. We're going to look at the wings. So another great thing on the golden eagle, they have that clear tail band. They also have these white patches, which are essentially just under their wrists. So they're near the end of their wings. If you look at, they have the big feathers on the end are their primaries, and as they go into their secondary feathers, they have these really white patches, and they're usually pretty defined, and they're usually in that same spot. Now the bald eagle can have all sorts of different patterning under there. Again, it's that mottled, dirty look. And this isn't always true, but sometimes, oftentimes, with juvenile bald eagles, I've seen they kind of have white armpits. So they'll have white up against their body, whereas the golden eagles are only going to have the white on the ends of their wings. And then, of course, we have our tail, that beautiful tail band. It's really clear, easy to see. But it can, again, in low light or far away, it can be hard because sometimes there's white on the tail of that bald eagle too. So that mottled white can kind of trick you. So you really need to pay attention to all those different field marks put together. Another thing about bald eagles is that their head kind of that white head progresses over time. So you saw in that last picture, we were looking at a really young bird that was probably in that 6 month, half a year range that you see in the top left there. But it can take 5 to even 7 years for them to get a fully white head. So, for the first 2.5 years or so, it can be challenging sometimes. That if you look at that 2.5-year-old eagle head, it kind of has that modeling that honestly could be mistaken for a golden nape if the light hit it just right. So that's another challenge to this. So we have learned a lot about how to tell these birds apart. And so now I'm going to give you a quiz, or I mean, you can treat it as much as a quiz as you want, or you can just watch and think about it in your head. If you want to put your answer in the chat, you can do that. But I'm going to show you some pictures of different birds, and I want you to see if you can identify them. So let's give it a try. So pop quiz. I forgot I had this slide. I just think my husband, when I showed him this, said, bald eagle. And I was very proud of him. Good job, buddy. All right, here's bird number one. We're going to start out easy. What are we looking at here? So take a minute, pay attention to the different features, and I'm going to count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have a golden eagle. So good job. Thanks, Skipper and Erez. Yeah, awesome. Good job, everybody. So like I said, we'll start out easy, but it's going to get harder. All right, how about this one? Now, this is kind of tricky because I did not tell you or show you what the little tiny chicks look like before they fledge. But remember all the different ways you can identify these birds and think about what is this baby bird going to be? So I'm getting lots of goldens. Thinks it's another golden. Not seeing any bald at this point. So you guys are right. These are golden eagle chicks. Now, the biggest context clue here, because the chicks are really hard to tell apart sometimes, but really your big context clue is where are these birds in the landscape? What is around them? This is clearly a desert, and it's on a cliff face. So it's not going to be a bald eagle because they need open water. And they could nest on a cliff face, but not one that's in the middle of the desert. Very good. Okay, this one probably pretty easy, but this is about oftentimes when I see an eagle, what I see. It's like, oh, there's a little speck in the sky. Getting bald, bald, bald. Yeah. Yeah, you guys are too smart. That one's easy. I mean, think about it. The head, you can see how from that far away might be tricky, but that tail is unmistakable. Um, I I grew up with a dad who was a biologist, and he could look at a bird that was a mile away and say, "Oh, that's a bald eagle," or "That's a whatever." He could tell, and he would often look at how it was flying and things like that. So I wish I had some videos we could test you that way, but for sure, this is a bald eagle. Okay, let's see if we can make this a little bit harder. What about this one? All are too smart. Yeah, this is a golden eagle. And now it does have the gold nape, so there's your good field mark. And you can see this one's getting close to adulthood because look at his wing patches and his tail band are all kind of growing out. So it could be a little tricky from far away if you only saw him under the wings. That could look like a more mottled wing. But fortunately, we have the other indicators of that golden nape and that slender bill to help us identify him. Okay, what about this buddy? Handsome creature. You guys are so good. You don't even need me. Why am I even here? Yes, this is another bald eagle. This is a juvenile. So we have our mottled feathers. We have that big chunky bill. And then, of course, his little naked ankles are always a giveaway. Okay, how about this one? Yep, you are all doing great. I'm going to teach you a shorthand if you want. So in with our raptors, we have four-letter like abbreviations that we can use when we're talking about them or mostly writing about them. So I'm going to put this, yeah, there it is. GOEA is a golden eagle, and surprisingly, BAEA, the bald eagle. Yep, beautiful. So very good. This is another golden eagle. Again, he's got that small, especially when his feathers are all fluffed like that, up like that. His beak looks really petite. He's got that beautiful tail line. Everything we need to know to see that he's a golden boy. Now, how about this one? There's actually two really good ways to tell what this guy is. You all are smart and got it. Yeah, he's a baldy. And we know that from a couple context clues, right? He's next to open water, so he's in a habitat with lots of trees. And then again, even though he's so little and doesn't have his big feathers yet, his big boy feathers, he does have those naked ankles and tarsi. So we know that he is a bald eagle. Okay, looking at here. Yep, a bald eagle. Good job. So again, we have the mottled feathers, we have the dirty looking tail, the chunky bill, And even this one, I mean, you can normally you can't see this when they're flying because they tuck their feet up, but you can see a little hint of ankle there. He's just teasing us with that. So you are doing great. You see, you're already Eagle ID experts, but I'm going to make it harder for you. So HawkWatch International has a study. We call it our Eagle Vehicle Strike study, or EVS for short. And we had noticed we've been putting transmitters on golden eagles for about like 13 years or so, and we've been studying golden eagles in the West Desert of Utah for over 20 years. So these transmitters help us learn a lot about birds. We learn, where they travel to, how long they live, if they come back to nest in the same areas, if they're around the same birds that they were around before, all sorts of things. But eventually, we get the transmitters back, and that usually happens when there's a mortality. So when the birds die, we're able to recover the transmitters. Now, a lot of the time, over about 40% of the time, we don't know what caused the death of the bird. Usually it can be because the bird is just gone and the transmitter's left behind. That's happened a few times. It can be because the bird has deteriorated. It's been down for a long time and it's really hard to tell. But sometimes, over half the time, we can tell what causes their death. Most of the time, the most common cause of death is starvation. It's a hard world out there. That's nature for you. But there are a lot of ways that human actions impact the birds and can cause their deaths. And of the known ways that eagles pass away, the one that humans impact the most is vehicle collisions. Um, so vehicle collisions cause over 10% of mortality for these eagles with the transmitters. And so why is that happening? Well, in the winter time, when food is scarce, a great resource for eagles is roadkill. So you can see this bald eagle is getting ready to happily chow down on a dead deer. And so we don't necessarily want to remove roadkill because that can be an important part of their diet, but we did want to try and understand how these eagles were interacting with vehicles and the roadkill, and if there's ways that we could intervene to make it safer for them. So I'm not going to go into too much more about the study, but what we did in order to understand how these birds were interacting with the roadkill and the cars is we put out trail cameras, like hundreds of trail cameras, and they took literally millions of photos. We have a huge database, and we have volunteers who comb through all of those photos, and they have to identify a number of things like how fresh is the carcass and how far away from the road it is and lots of other things. But they also have to figure out what kind of eagles they're looking at on the carcasses. So I will warn you, there are some animal carcasses in the coming up slides. Nothing graphic, like what you're seeing here is about what you're going to get. So we're not going to be looking at, guts or blood or anything. But we are going to see animals eating other animals. So if that's something that bothers you, you can tune out for just a few minutes, or maybe turn off the video and just listen to the voice, whatever you need to do. Eris asks, are the recovered carcasses routinely tested for lead or other contaminants? We don't test the carcasses. Generally speaking, these animals are definitely, I mean, they're roadkill because they're right by the side of the road. So of course they could have lead in them had they been, maybe shot by a hunter and then hadn't been killed and got away or something like that. But most of the time, lead isn't as big a concern with these carcasses because it's pretty obvious that they were killed by a car and not a bullet. But that's a great question, and we do test for lead in lots of other areas. And the eagles that we put the transmitters on are tested for lead. So all the birds that we put transmitters on, we take very small samples, and we can use that to test for lead and other contaminants. And we have a whole other project around that. But I don't want to take up all our time talking about HawkWatch. I easily could. So basically what I'm going to do is I've pulled some of these camera photos that have either a bald eagle or a golden eagle on them. They're a little trickier. They're not going to be these beautiful, screensaver wallpaper type photos. And I want to see if you can identify those using our field marks. So let's go to our first one. So here's our first bird coming down to a roadkill. So what do we think we're looking at here? Getting some goldens. You guys are pretty confident. What if I said it was a bald? I would be lying. It's a golden. Good job. So this does have a lot of white under the wings with this lighting, so it can be a little trickier, but you can tell that the white is kind of concentrated on those end of the wing patches. And best of all, you have that really clear tail band. And if you kind of use your imagination and look at the feet of the bird, it's pretty, you can see that there's feathers all the way down to its feet. So excellent work, everybody. Okay, here's another one. This one's a little trickier. And I just want to say a little moment of respect for the volunteers and seasonal technicians and other people who comb through these photos for hours and hours, because we have done it in education for some projects, like some education, like curriculum we're building, and it's a lot. It's a lot. Science is meticulous and time consuming. All right, looks like we have a couple guesses. It is a young bald eagle. Very good. So you can see the breast has a lot of mottling on it. So that's what we're going to be looking for. That's going to be the main identifier here. And just for funsies, here's what happens like 2 frames later. So here you have an adult bald eagle and the juvenile behind it. And you can see, look at those little ankles. See those little ankle flashes on both those birds? Just like a little peep show at their ankles. So yes, they are both balds. Okay, I have one more. This one's my trickiest one. Let's see if you can get it. Oh no, I showed you the answer. All right. Okay, so I forgot to make the bald eagle thing appear. But what I do want to do is, can you tell me in the chat how I know that this is a bald eagle? If anybody can tell what field mark I'm using or field marks to identify this bird. Okay, bigger head. And his head's kind of hard to see on this one. Yeah, ankles, no tail ring, tail length. Look at the length. Very good. You guys got it. See how the length of this tail is a little bit shorter than compared to the rest of its body? All of that is true. For me, the ankles are always the first place I look. I feel like that's the easiest thing to spot sometimes. But yeah, you can see there's a definite they talk about the thigh gap on beautiful women. He has the ankle gap where you can see where the feathers stop above where his bare ankle starts. Excellent, excellent work, everybody. You are now Eagle ID specialists. I am gonna stop sharing now. And so we've learned how to identify um, our different birds. And I think we should spend some time looking at some beautiful birds and meeting HawkWatch's Eagle ambassadors. So I'm going to turn the time over to Chrys and Debbie. And this is a new experiment we're doing with having uh, sort of our field crew reporting. Um, and then I don't know, Sammy, if you want to pin that screen, I think that should make it big for everybody. And hopefully you can hear.
Yeah, I can hear you just great.
Awesome, Debbie. All right, I'm going to turn the time over to y'all, and let's meet Chrys and Haliae.
Okay, we'll give you a few facts about Chrys. First of all, as we all know, he is a golden eagle, and he actually weighs about 9 pounds. So that's equivalent to the weight of a gallon of milk on the end of your fist. So if you're carrying him, he feels like a gallon of milk. And of course, he is a golden eagle. As you can see, he's got the golden feathers on the back of his head and neck. And the reason why he's in captivity is because he has a left wing injury. And he was actually found on the side of the road with a broken left wing. He was taken to a wildlife rehabilitator here in Utah. And they put the left wing in a cast for 6 months. But unfortunately, the efforts were unsuccessful. And since he can no longer fly, he's now living his life in captivity. So we estimate him to be about 22 years old, and he was about 7. We estimate again; these are all estimates when he had his accidents. So he is used as an ambassador bird for HawkWatch and goes to a variety of different events and get to teach people up close and personal about golden eagles. Do you have any questions? I know you covered a lot of the golden eagle facts, Melissa. So I don't know if the audience has any specific questions they have for Chrys that we could answer at this time.
Debbie, can you talk about their hunting strategies,
Oh,
and
yeah.
maybe like some of the unique features that they have?
Okay. Golden eagles are very powerful predators. As a matter of fact, throughout history, they've been revered and respected for their power, might, and hunting prowess. They're often called the lion and king of the sky, and ancient tribal cultures held them in mystic reverence, and they were the mascot for warfare for the militaries of ancient Egypt, Rome, and Syria. Golden eagles, as I mentioned, are powerful predators. They will generally hunt and kill their prey while in flight. They are able to lift over half their weight in flight in those powerful feet and talons, which can exert up to about 900 pounds per square inch. So that's equivalent to the grip of about 20 men. We're being very rough here. 20 men with enough force to drive a nail into concrete. And their rear talon or hallux is the length of a grizzly bear claw, about 3 inches. They feed on a variety of prey or food, including amphibians, birds, invertebrates, including insects, reptiles, but their favorite food is mammals of all sizes. And for survival, they have developed a variety of different hunting techniques or styles. They'll soar, being able to sight moving prey the size of a jackrabbit up to a distance of 3 miles. They stalk, sneaking up and ambushing unsuspecting prey. They'll hunt, seen on a perch like the branch of a tree, and they'll wait for prey to pass beneath them. They quarter, that means they will hunt their food in a zigzag pattern, which confuses their prey. And they can stoop or dive, reaching speeds up to 200 miles per hour, making them the second fastest animal on the planet next to the peregrine falcon. So indeed, the world's great aerial predator, lion and king of the sky.
Awesome, Debbie. So somebody wants to know what is the difference between the vocalizations of the two different birds. And I don't know, we don't have like a microphone we can put up to them,
Oh,
but
okay. Well, they definitely, between the bald and the golden has kind of a softer, trill-like whistle sound. Can you pick that up at all, Chrys? I don't know if that can be picked up, that sound. Oh, I see. Okay. So yeah, he's got this, it's for the size of a golden eagle, their call isn't very impressive. As a matter of fact, when you see movies where they have a golden eagle or an eagle soaring in the sky, most of the time they are using the call of a red-tailed hawk because of the fact that the golden eagles call, as impressive a bird as they are, the call is not that impressive. So,
um,
yeah.
I can do my best Chris impression, which he does like
Oh, go
this
ahead. Yes.
beep 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 beep. He does like this cute.
You
It's
you have
very
nailed
cute.
it.
When
Yeah,
you
yeah,
come
you've
back
got
to
it.
see him, he's always, before you even get into his mew, he's excited and starts talking at you. It's fun.
He's very vocal when he eats too, for some reason. So, yeah, very
And
very
then
vocal bird.
did you, and I don't think I missed this. Did you tell how Chris came to HawkWatch?
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't say how he got to HawkWatch. He was in captivity for about, let's see, we've had him for 3 years. So he was in captivity with them for about 10 years. But yes, the Great Basin Rehab down in Mapleton, Utah, uh, asked if HawkWatch would be willing to uh, have his permit transferred to HawkWatch. They have limited space, and they were acquiring another golden eagle that they needed to rehabilitate, and so they wanted to move Chrys out since he was glove trained and ready to go out as an ambassador. So they want HawkWatch to have him to use in their programs.
And his original injury, we think was a car, correct?
Yes, that it was not witnessed, but it did look like it was a car when they foraged for food on the side of the road. We believe that he most likely flew up when a car came, which is a common cause of accidents for eagles and other birds of prey, and we believe that's what happened. He was hit by a car while foraging for food
So
on
yeah,
the
that
side of the road.
yes, he kind of ties right into our Eagle vehicle strike study. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions about Chrys, but again, everybody feel free to throw stuff in the chat if you have them. So why don't we meet Haliae?
Okay, so HawkWatch International has had Haliae. Haliae is short for her scientific name, Haliaetus leucocephalus alicenthus, which means seagull white-headed northern species in Latin and Greek. And she came to HawkWatch 4 years ago. She was found in northern Alaska with a broken right wing. And like Chrys, she was taken to a rehabilitation center in Sitka, Alaska, with the intent of getting her back out into the wild again. But unfortunately, their efforts were unsuccessful as well and could not be repaired. So she can no longer fly. So she will be living in captivity the rest of her life. We estimate her to be about 6 years old. And in captivity, eagles can live to be up to 50, and in the wild, about 30 to 35. So both these eagles have much longevity left in them. And yeah, so it wasn't for sure. We think someone did say apparently she was found on an ice block in Alaska. A fisherman found her when she was about 2. So as far as what caused the injury is unknown.
Debbie, somebody wants to know what they eat. What do we feed these birds in captivity?
Okay. Both of them will eat rat, deer, rabbit, and quail. And then Haliae enjoys her fish. As we know, bald eagles are fish eagles, so their favorite food is fish. Uh, Chrys eats the same as Haliae, only he's not a big fish eater. We don't feed him fish. I've tried it with him a few times. He'll eat a little bit of it, but they are, like I said earlier, primarily mammal hunters. So Haliae gets the fish.
Awesome. Okay, we have another question, which is actually a great question. They want to know, why are the eagles tethered if they can't fly? And I know
Okay.
the answer to that question, but
Well, I think that's a great question. Well, what I could do is untie them and show why they are, because even though they cannot fly, they can still run. And the tethering is for their safety, because they would run around the yard and get into all kinds of mischief and things they shouldn't be in. So that's why they are tethered. It really is for their safety.
so and I'll just add, yeah, when they're in there, they have a really large, it's like 50 feet long and 10 feet high and like 10 or 12 feet wide. So they have a really large enclosure that they live in. It's called a mew, and they can move around really freely in there. Um, Honestly, these birds are really powerful. So if we untethered them, trying to catch them again, even if they can't fly, would be dangerous for them and dangerous for us. Somebody asked if these eagles get to breed.
No, a very good question. They do not get to breed. The bald eagle, it is illegal to have a captive bald eagle in any sort of breeding program. So they will never breed in captivity. As far as the golden eagle, it depends on what kind of permit they are on. And I'm not sure actually if I don't know. Can they? I'm not sure. Chrys, do you have any idea? Yeah, I'm not sure about the laws on the golden eagle, to be honest with you, Melissa. But we would not definitely not breed Chrys in captivity.
Yeah, I
I don't know.
think
I don't. Yeah.
I don't know about any eagle breeding programs. There are raptors that are bred in captivity for the sport of falconry, but eagles have an extra level of protection from other raptors. So I don't believe there's captive breeding in the United States of eagles. Falconers can use eagles from that are exotics from other countries and maybe breed them that way. But yeah, all of our birds, we have a permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, um, and they are to be used for education programs specifically. So none of our birds we're not allowed to breed any of our birds, and I don't think we would want to anyway because birds that are bred in captivity often have to spend their lives in captivity, and we're not really interested in that. So we're almost out of time, but we have a couple more questions. Kat wants to know, is Haliae vocalizing, or is her behavior right now a sign of recognition or agitation? And I will add that usually we don't put the eagles this close to each other when they're tethered when they're out in the yard, just so they have a little bit more space. So it could be that Haliae's just like, why is there another eagle this close to me? But Debbie could probably give us better insight into, kind of why she's flapping around a little bit right now.
Well, she's vocalizing. I can't say exactly why, but I know that she started moving toward Chrys there. I was filming, or we were filming her. She's got the hackles up. So in this scenario, to me, it looks like she's just trying to let Chrys know that this is her territory and just keep a bit of a distance. So I know first thing in the morning when I go in with her in the morning, she'll call like that as well. But in this, because you can see the hackles up on her back, it is a bit more of an aggression here. She definitely likes her space and doesn't want people to intrude in on her.
She's probably just claiming her territory a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, you can
But
tell.
she's not in any danger, and she's fine. We wouldn't, if we felt like she was showing enough signs of stress that she, was really stressed out, we would definitely back off from that.
Oh,
Um,
definitely, yeah.
Jill Shannon wants to know, who is allowed to have eagle feathers?
You have to have a special permit to have eagle feathers. So you have to apply for those through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. North American Indian tribes are able to acquire eagle feathers with very little effort because they use them for ceremonial purposes, religious purposes. But you do have to contact the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, and they will determine if your purpose warrants having them. So it's a little bit intensive to get eagle feathers. That's all
And
part. That's all part of protecting them.
yeah, and in fact, at HawkWatch, we don't even keep the eagle feathers. So um, we literally, when these eagles molt, we take all the feathers and we put them in a package and we ship them to the eagle feather repository. And then indigenous people can request those feathers from that repository. Or scientific use is also another reason to have feathers. So it's like someone asked earlier about testing for lead or other toxins. Sometimes those substances can be found in the chemical composition of feathers, so they can use it for that as well. Judith asks that she knows about some rare instances of interspecies breeding between red-shouldered hawks and red-tailed hawks and bald eagles and stellar sea eagles. Has there been any evidence of breeding between bald eagles and golden eagles? And Judith, I have to say to that one, I don't know. I have not heard of any. I don't imagine it would happen, but I'm going to look into that. And Judith, we have your information from when you registered for the webinar. So if I find anything interesting, I will send that to you because that is a great question. So we are almost out of time. I'm wondering, Debbie, since people asked about the calls of the birds, if it would be possible to take off the headset and maybe just point the microphone at the birds and see if we can
Sure,
get some of their vocalizations. That might be fun. So let's
you
give that a
bet.
shot.
Okay, we'll start with Chrys.
Of course, now's the time he decides to be quiet. We may have to do recordings. Actually, um, I do have some videos of them making noise that I can share too. So if this doesn't work, I'll be happy to provide links. We will share out a link to the recording and then we can, here we go. Let's get Haliae. A little bit. It's kind of delayed a little bit. but we're running out of time. So I will, and I don't think they can hear me because they have the headset off, but I will, this was a noble effort. I will include a clip that I have, a couple videos that I have of them talking. They have, in fact, I actually, not to like plug myself, but I have a TikTok where I post lots of videos. Um, it's called, it's the if you want to look me up, it's at like the little at symbol life with raptors. And there's lots of clips on there of both these eagles talking and making noise and all the other birds that we work with as well. So that's one place to hear them if you would like to. So we want to thank everybody for coming today. We want to thank Bear River Migratory Bird Refuge for inviting us to participate in their Eagle Day. Um, and just one more time, if you are in the area and you can make it up to the refuge today, they have some other activities available. You can go look for wild bald eagles out there. Now's a good time to see them. They're going to be heading north not too much longer from now, so this is a good chance. And we hope that all of you will get outside, that you will look for birds, and that you will be a friend to raptors. We know that they need us, and we couldn't do what we do without help from folks like you. You can always learn more at hawkwatch.org. And as Sammy mentioned, we have a Raptor ID app that is free that you can download that will help you identify other birds and has lots of great information on it. So have a great day, everybody. Happy Eagle Day. Thank you for everything. And I hope this was helpful information and that you'll join us for another webinar soon. Bye, everybody.